What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from ActTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to talk about Thelma. This is a Magnolia Pictures release, and sadly, it does have audio description, but they haven't been really great about making sure it makes it to VOD platforms, and I don't have a strong hope that it will make it onto whatever streaming service it eventually lands on. So I rented it from the Apple Store just because I've basically been predicting June Squibb in my top 5 best actresses. And I figured I should see why. And we could talk about it. For my blind fans, I'm wearing a black hat, black sunglasses, and a Pinky in the Brain shirt. So not really in theme with Thelma, but maybe Thelma every night tries to take over the world. I don't know. I don't know her life. I think June Squibb definitely does, though. In '93, she's taking over the year. Also, was a little pop-up featured voice this year in the #1 film, Inside Out 2. So she's having a little bit of a good year, which is one of the reasons why I think there's going to be an increased look at her and this film that definitely defied expectations, made more money than I think a lot of people thought it would make over the summer, and attracted a lot more attention than I think people thought it would make for films starring June Squibb, and became a little bit of a little sensation. And because of her age and her acclaim in Hollywood, and this very likely being the last chance that she'll have a role prominent enough to warrant a nomination, I think I think she's got a good chance. I think she's definitely got a chance at Golden Globe Best Actress in a Comedy nomination, if not winning that category, depending on how Amelia Perez goes, because of the fact that it's Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy. I think she'll definitely get the nomination, and I think probably some other critics groups. I think she's probably headed for an Independent Spirit Award nomination, some stuff like that. It's possible also at Independent Spirit that Richard Roundtree picks up in the supporting category as well, a posthumous nomination. So what is Thelma? What is this movie that people have been talking about? Well, it's a movie about a grandmother, 93-year-old grandmother, who basically has her best relationship in her life is with her grandson. She ends up getting scammed, and she ends up sending some money to somebody that she thinks is her grandson, that her grandson is in this intense situation and needs help, and so she sends money to help him, and then calls and gets her family involved, and they find out that the grandson's okay and it was just a scam, and then they think that she's just some senile lady that needs to be in a nursing home, and of course she's not that, but proves to be fairly capable over the course of the film, and she's determined to right the wrong that has happened to her in her life. So she sets out on a rather hilarious path to doing just that. It's like John Wick if John Wick was 93 and June Squibb. And so instead of all the situations where you usually get in these revenge thrillers where the action sequences are these huge set pieces, they're more like regular everyday situations, like crossing the street, not falling down, creaky old stairs, like the kind of things that a 93-year-old person has to deal with / worry about. And just they work in so it feels like it's a low grade action movie at the same time, but it's also funny, it's heartfelt. It has a really nice performance from June Squibb. Just like it kind of ties everything together. She's just so lovely in the role that it's hard to root against her. It's hard to watch this film and go, nah, not that role. No, I don't want to vote for that. It's kind of, you watch this film and you go, you know, this is like a happy place film. Like sometimes we watch so much dark shit all the time that it's just nice to have a happy place movie every once in a while. So even without audio description, there were moments that I thought were really funny, like with she does this thing where she keeps thinking that she knows somebody, so she has a couple conversations with somebody where she will walk up to them and she'll be like, "Do you know so and so?" And they'll be like, "Oh no, I don't. Do you know so and so?" And she's like, "Oh no, I don't. But you look so familiar." And the other person will be like, "Yeah, you look really familiar." And then like know each other, but they feel like they do. Um, and she does that a couple times, and it's funny. And eventually, it turns into something like the gag pays off. A lot of times, there's a lot of setups and punchlines in here where they set something up, and it's funny the first time, where somebody brings something up, and you're like, okay, and then it comes back around later on. So, um, lots of really good uses of things. She has this like life alert bracelet, which she uses really well when she needs to. They have both she and Richard Roundtree's character both have hearing aid devices that they're able to pair with their phones so that they can hear and have conversations. Um, and they have some really great exchanges throughout the film. So June Squibb is great. Richard Roundtree, who plays one of her friends, one of her last surviving friends. She has a sequence where she's trying to call for like people for help and like for a ride or something without bothering her family, just like covertly looking for help. And she finds out that like basically all of her friends are dead, and she ends up checking on Ben, played by Richard Roundtree, who's in a nursing home, who's putting on the weirdest performance of Annie. Like his nursing home is doing Annie, but it's like all with old people, and they keep playing these scenes that are just between like Warbucks, Annie, and I think Grace are the three characters. And I'm like, I want to see the Hard Knock Life scene. I want to see them rehearsing that. That's the deleted scene that I need from Thelma, is a bunch of senior citizens doing Hard Knock Life for Annie. So yeah, that's the show that for some reason somebody thought, you know what would be fun for them to put on? Annie. Annie makes sense at this place. So, so he's Warbucks, and but he also is a friend of Thelma, and they go back, and he ends up sort of teaming up with her in her quest for vengeance. Um, being chivalrous and not letting her go out on her own, and it's nice. He has a nice performance. I don't know that he needs a nomination, but considering it would be the last one we'd be able to give him, because he has since passed away, I wouldn't mind it. You know what I'm saying? Like I posthumous nominations don't bother me, especially if they're for somebody who hasn't previously gotten a nomination before. So just would be nice to get them while they're still alive. Yes, June Squibb has an Oscar nomination. It was for Nebraska, so if she doesn't get a nomination for Thelma, it won't be the end of the world, but it was a supporting actress nomination. It would be cool if she became like the oldest actress nominated in the leading category. In the supporting cast, you have Clark Gregg, who plays the most annoying son-in-law. He's obnoxious. I hated him. Like in every fiber of my being, this dude, I like everything he says. It's just, I hate that guy. Like Clark Gregg is an actor, but just this dude's role is just, he's almost like the villain of the film, even though he's not really, because he's not the person who scammed her. Parker Posey plays her daughter, who is, I don't know. I didn't really get a lot from Parker here. I love Parker Posey, but I didn't really get a familiar connection. She has no chemistry with June, and there's no real background to suggest why she has this odd disconnection with her mother. She's like, "That's my mother," and I'm like, "I don't feel like that's your mother. When like you're a better actress than this." So they kind of took me out of the movie a little bit because I hated their roles and they felt just so oddly placed in here and had no real. The grandson, who I'm like not familiar with his acting at all, he kind of plays kind of a doofusy character, but he has more of a connection with June Squibb than anybody else, and which he's supposed to because he's the one person who in her life who actually seems to care about her. But Parker just doesn't even really seem to have. Uh, I don't know. It's a very odd performance from her. Um, and I'm down for pretty much any Parker Posey performance. Thought she was great in Lost in Space, for example. So this is one of my least favorite Parker Posey performances. I just felt like she maybe got the role at the last second, like wasn't the first choice, and somebody bowed out, and she got handed a script, and she was like, "Oh, I'm here." They're all just like, "Thanks, Parker, for showing up," because so and so dropped out. And she's just like, "Well, I'm just doing a solid for a friend." And maybe, I don't know. But as far as the film, as far as being a blind film critic and watching it, there are plenty of action sequences here that didn't have audio description that I couldn't really follow. But I got a lot of the humor and I got a lot of the conversation. So in general, I would be able to I got the gist of the film. But as far as like pinpointing an actual grade, that's where it gets kind of nebulous when you start trying to grade things and you're like, is this, especially for the people who are on like scales of 1 to 10 and they're doing like point systems and they're like, I'm giving it an 8.3. And it's like, well, what's your difference between 8.3, 8.2, 8.4, 8.1? Like, because that is where I get lost. And I wouldn't necessarily be able to grade this that way. I don't think that there's a world in which this film gains audio description and I would give it a thumbs down. So I would at least be able to say thumbs up. Like, if you're part of my sighted audience, I think this is a good movie. I enjoyed the parts of it that I was able to follow. The writing is clever. Just the overall plot and premise are clever. June Squibb is entertaining. Richard Roundtree does a nice job. So there's enough here for me to be able to at least recommend it on that surface level. But if I was to recommend it to a blind person as is this a great experience without audio description? I would say no. One of the reasons why I went ahead and watched this was A, because I had somebody who wanted to see it, and B, I heard at least the track, and I couldn't remember whether or not they did another track for the theatrical release, but the initial track that they had at Sundance was not good. So I was like, well, I would, already heard the reports on the initial audio description track, so unless they re-recorded it, it's possible that this audio description track never got any better than it was. So I don't know that I was missing out on anything extraordinary. Um, and sometimes bad audio description tracks don't really do much for a movie. I can definitely point to In a Violent Nature for being an example of, I'm not really sure that having that audio description track changes the movie because it's so poorly done. Like, I mean, it gives you maybe just a slight advantage as a blind person because you get to know some characters and some stuff, but in the most part, you can feel the other giant chunk of stuff that you're not getting still, which is very frustrating. It's one of those films with very little dialogue, so there are like giant scenes of silence where you could easily put more audio description, and they just don't. Here, there are some action sequences that I'm sure would have been easily fleshed out with audio description, where it was just like this weird sort of, I want to say like Mission Impossible James Bond inspired music that was just kind of playing in the background. Not great. I'm not going to say this film deserves like a score nomination, but the homage was felt. So I think, yeah, just the originality of the concept, the cute angle at which they approach this, and two really strong performances are the reasons to watch this. So I would give Thelma yes, you know, a fresh score if I was on the tomato meter. But at the same time, as a blind film critic, my official grade has to be unwatchable. If you watch it without audio description, it's not something that makes tremendous sense, and you kind of miss out on the action sequences. And there are little things that they have that happen without audio description, chase sequences and stuff with carts. I did have a sighted person with me, so I got some of the stuff filled in. But yeah, there's a lot there that you wouldn't get without the audio description. So I'm aware that I know more about the film because I watched this with somebody else. And had I watched this by myself, which is what everybody should be able to do, is watch this with or without, I would not have understood as much of the film as possible. So that was a huge factor in the decision to me was, I will be watching it with somebody, so I can, I guess, watch it. And I wanted to see if I stick with my June Squibb for Best Actress. And I do. I don't see people in the race. I don't see enough Oscar prognosticators who seem to have a lock on spots 4 and 5. We basically have 3 locks for actress and 2 spots that are floating with choices. And that's what I see across the spectrum right now. And I'm like, if we're doing that, then I don't know why one of the choices can't be June Squibb. I do have a pause because Magnolia Pictures, I don't know, is going to mount a huge campaign for her. But I also think June Squibb kind of campaigns herself much the same way Andrea Riseborough did for To Leslie. I think if you just kind of put her in the race, she'll end up in enough precursor categories that people will be aware of her film. It came out in June. It had above expected box office for what the film cost and for a Magnolia Pictures release. So when you put all of those things together, I think you kind of realize there's a shot here. It's not one I would normally take because I normally look at the distributor and I go, nah, it's not going to happen. And it's one of the reasons why I think another film this year, Hard Truths, is seeing its Oscar chances dwindle, is because it got picked up by Bleecker Street, which has been unable to really mount Oscar campaigns in the past. So yeah, it's a gamble, but I'm gonna roll the dice. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you guys on the other side.